Well, as we move forward with Halloween Ends, I think we all know we're going to have the inevitable assessing the trilogy as a whole, and people's scores or reactions are going to shift or perhaps maintain consistency in terms of what they felt about the individual, what they felt about the individual, what they felt about the individual chapters versus the story on the whole. I think I've been clear. I haven't really liked this entire trilogy. I would rate it overall as poor to mediocre. I do recognize it did some pretty good things, and it did sort of cure a few problems, but overall, I've been more disappointed than happy with what they've been doing. But it has its partisans, and one of them is Wolfula, who is, I think, pretty big voice among quote horror YouTubers. And I remember going back Wolfula a long time. He did those very early reviews, which were very funny and comedic. I'm still not quite sure what the channel is. Is it trying to be doing serious analysis, or is it trying to be a comedy channel? Because again, the video he did for Halloween Kills was very good. I also looked at his Halloween Kills quote initial review. And again, the guy's pretty good. He knows his stuff, definitely. But overall, I did find it a little weird where he was going. He did make some good points, but I think the bad points overwhelmed. But I do think he at least mounted, I think, a serious case why Halloween Kills was at least a fairly decent entry. So let's hear him speak in terms of his initial big opening.
Characters like the doctor and nurse couple that Michael passes by during their departure from their home. Their appearance in the 2018 film is pretty prominent, but they don't appear again within this movie, which even led me to believe they were just supposed to be Julian's parents leaving him on Halloween night with his babysitter Vicky, which would explain why Michael targeted Julian's house to begin with, but no! Even the couple briefly shown in Halloween 2018 still had a story to tell.
You're not gonna believe that they were in my pocket the whole time.
Better understanding that Halloween 2018 is the first act of a story has made that film far more enjoyable for me, and I liked the movie a lot to begin with when it came out. It just didn't feel complete to me at the time.
Happy Halloween, Michael.
Halloween 2018 even follows the first act of Joseph Campbell's three-act hero's journey, believe it or not. The most commonly used story structure found throughout history. Only in this case, it's the villain's journey. Let me break down the stages of Michael Myers' villain's journey.
Well, it's quite an ambitious theory, but I just have to say he's, I think, very wrong in general and in particulars. I get what he's trying to say, that Joseph Campbell is very influential. So it's plausible that they did use, quote, the structure of Campbell. But even if they did, I don't think that really helps Halloween 2018. But let me not be totally negative. I do think he made a few strong points. One, he makes a note of how they did make a good job of seeding the characters. In other words, if you do look closely at 2018, a lot of the characters that show up in Halloween Kills, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're already shown in 2018. So they actually did do a good job setting up some of the story ideas for Halloween Kills. Because one of the problems I had is it just felt jarring. Like, who are these people? How did this happen? Where is this coming from? They did give you a few hints in 2018, to be fair to them, and he does make a good job of noting that. And second of all, I did like how he kind of answered the question with Lindsay and a few other people saying, well, why did they live and others got killed? And I don't think he's correct overall, but in terms of this story, yes, it does seem to be the case that for whatever reason, if you are stuck and get into an open area and just run fast enough, Michael's not going to keep running after you. He is going to just give up and move on to other people. So I do think he made some pretty strong points for his side and for his case, but he's also ignoring a ton of counter evidence. And it's not that I hate him or dislike him, but I think that felt to me a little too convenient, how he just forgot many ridiculous contrivances. But to be fair, he did say that he was frustrated with Halloween Kills initially, but looking back on it, it makes a lot more sense. Well, a lot is going to hang on Halloween Ends and whether they really cure a lot of the plot holes they made up in Halloween Kills. I don't think they will, and we'll see if he'll be honest and say, yeah, they didn't really do a good job overall. But we'll have to wait and see. But I do think it's a really good video essay overall. But I do think sometimes he's making quite a few leaps, especially when it comes to the infamous evil dies tonight dilemma.
Frustrating as it is, and it's just great that this pointless chaos is happening over Michael Myers and he doesn't even fucking know about it. He's able to passively turn people violent like him, but giving into madness is how Michael Myers wins.
It's not him. Not him, Tommy. Now he's turning us into monsters.
While all of this nonsense is going on, ironically for most of the movie, nobody thinks to scope out the old Myers place because nobody was taking the time to actually think. You know, we complain about people in horror movies being stupid, but I think the thing we need to face is the fact that most people in the real world are extremely stupid. Why shouldn't that be the case in a horror movie?
Well, I think it's a fair thing to say. Within, quote, a story itself, they will make some crazy decisions, and we do have to accept it for what it is. That's going to be true for Lord of the Rings. It's going to be true for Star Wars. It's going to be true for a lot of horror films. People make stupid decisions to move the plot. The question is, does it make sense reasonably within that story world that they would make those decisions? I think to some extent, Anakin making quote unquote bad or stupid decisions to, for instance, help the Empire and help Sidious. It's pretty stupid overall. What did he think Sidious was going to do? Give him a big old cake at the end? That sounds pretty stupid. But again, within the story, it does make sense. Given his psychology, he would make these crazy decisions. I do like how he's trying to get out of it with Halloween Kills, saying, well, yes, it's stupid, but they're meant to be stupid. It's fine if some characters by design are making stupid decisions like that, like Marion trying to kill Michael with her gun and thinking nothing could go wrong. Okay, that was pretty stupid. You should have a backup plan, but I can see why she did what she did and trying to get revenge. However, I did appreciate him trying to get out of this by saying, well, basically what happened is everyone became Loomis, and like Loomis, they let revenge take over. Well, first of all, why would that be a bad thing? Michael is a mass murderer, so becoming obsessed with revenge with Michael Myers is not a bad thing necessarily. And I don't think they were going for mass Loomis. I think that's a clever interpretation. I think it's more plain and simple. Tommy Doyle is Donald Trump. It's pretty obvious what they were going for. They were making this allegory about how violence and being absolutist about good and evil can lead to some pretty awful decisions and some pretty awful consequences. And I didn't even care about the political allegory per se. But here I think he is being inconsistent with what he's saying because yes, they set up like where this fake Michael Myers came from, but I mean, do they not have eyes? It's pretty clear beyond a certain point. They'll know this guy is short. Michael's really tall. This guy's kind of weak. Michael's like super strong. This guy doesn't even look like Michael in almost any real way. How could they mistake him for Michael Myers? If we're going to say they did a good job of setting things up in some cases, they did a really bad job in other cases. And I kind of have to wonder how the geography works within Haddonfield. Because this thing has no consistency. At certain points, it seems really, really small that Michael can just kind of mosey on over to certain places. And in other instances, it's insanely big and people just can't find one another or text one another or use their cell phones to locate one another. I think it's a good video overall, but it does strike me as he's sort of kind of making a few concessions. He is making a few concessions strategically, but basically at the end of the day, he doesn't see much wrong with Halloween Kills, and that's fine. We'll always agree to disagree where movies go too far and expecting too much in terms of assumptions. But I do think at certain points he just wasn't looking at the evidence correctly in a way to skew the results. But he's a good guy. I think he's a very funny guy. He's a very serious guy. I don't think Wolfula could be ignored. But I do think he came in kind of skewed from the get-go, and he's seeing more of the good than bad. And perhaps I'm doing the same, looking more at the bad than good. And perhaps, hopefully, the fandom will harmonize somewhere in the middle. But if I'm going to represent the, quote, anti-Blumhouse trilogy side, I want to be straightforward. I'm not just doing it to be partisan. I do think this trilogy does have inherent problems. Like what, and I do that with the MCU when it, even if I like the characters, I do that with the DCEU, even with Snyder. Even if I like Snyder, I will be upfront and say, yeah, BVS definitely has a lot of problems. Man of Steel, less problems. Snyder Cut, perhaps the least amount of problems, but even that does have problems, and I'm willing to admit that, and that's where I stand.